land. So good stuff on the quarterbacks. Now, Greg, one of the most gripping kind of position battles that maybe and you can talk about this, maybe isn't even so much of a position battle as in terms of just trying to figure out what the committee split's going to be, but it's the Cincinnati Bengals backfield. No more Joe Mixon, which matters because my God, Joe Mixon had 270 plus touches in 5 of the last 6 years. So all sorts of opportunity on the table for Zach Moss and or Chase Brown for now. Please, fantasy guys, do not let Samaje Perine find his way back to Cincy to ruin what at least looks like a two-back committee for the time being. So, again, Greg, it's one of these things where it seemed like to me Chase Brown was getting most of the love throughout training camp, but then unofficial depth chart comes out and gives Zach Moss the rub. We also had some more recent comments saying that Moss has been doing a good job as well. How do you see this split shaking out? And do you think there's been enough love for Chase Brown for him to be, a poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs or Devin Achane versus a rich man's, Jaleel McLaughlin or a Marshawn Lloyd, where we have more concerns about him getting that featured role? How do you see this shaking out?
Well, I think one thing is pretty clear is that Chase Brown is going to have a much, much bigger role this season. Zach Taylor has said as much. He said there's going to be a big emphasis on his role this year. And Zach Taylor, while he's not honest on injury coach speak, he does have an 85% reliability rating on usage and workload coach speak. So definitely expect a big jump in usage for him. And Zach Taylor also said, I think he's earned that. I think he has worked the right way. They asked him to, in the offseason, work on his pass catching chops, which by all accounts he has done. They see him as a very explosive element in the offense. I think they would like for it to be a 50-50 split, but if there's room for any one running back in this backfield to take over, it's probably Chase Brown. Like we didn't get to see a ton of them last season, but like we know what Zach Moss is. Zach Moss is not going to be someone who takes like real command, like 75%, 80% bell cow kind of situation in this backfield. Like Chase Brown will be a thing this year. It's just a matter of what percentage of the work is he going to get. If he just like really goes off in the first few weeks, can you keep running a 50-50 split with these two?
I kind of had this epiphany yesterday where as much as we want to say like, okay, well, who profiles more like Joe Mixon? Well, with the pass blocking chops and just being more of the early down grinder, you could argue that it is Zach Moss. But honestly, with some of the things Moss brings to the table, maybe he's just going to be more of that, Samaje Perine version from those former Bengals teams. Because you look at that, man, and yes, it was the Joe Mixon show, but 2020, Perine had 74 touches. 2021, he had 82. 2022, he had 133, where if you looked at those snap rates, it actually was a lot closer to 50-50, 60-40 than you might expect given the touch counts. But obviously Mixon was the guy we wanted in fantasy because he's the one touching the football more times than not. But that's fine. And in the year 2024, everyone, we can live with two running back committees. Just gets complicated when we get 3 or 4 guys involved, like potentially those Broncos and Packers backfields I mentioned. So Chase Brown, 5'10", 209 pounds. I mean, the dude had 25 plus touches in 8 of his final 12 games in college. So I don't think there's too big of a concern about him being able to handle that workload. Yeah, he has turned into, guys, arguably the target for zero RB drafters out there. I think the floor is looking pretty solid. And, I don't want to get too carried away, but I'll let Peter Overset get carried away for me. He said Chase Brown is this year's Devin Achane in terms of just being able to make the absolute most out of his opportunities. And hey, the only running back faster than Devin Achane last year per next gen stats was Chase Brown. So not the worst comp in the world. I will keep trying to draft a hell of a lot more than I have earlier in the offseason. Give me all the Chase Brown for now. Greg, the other backfield that people have been paying a ton of attention to is out there in Dallas. And got an interesting note from a New York Times John Machado here yesterday, actually, where he said, at this point, it would be surprising for Dowdle not to make the roster. Yes, that would be surprising. But he also said Dowdle has to be the favorite to lead the team in rushing at this point. So I think when the Cowboys signed Ezekiel Elliott, a lot of us just assumed he'd be walking back into the starter's role. And I do think he'll be plenty involved. The pass pro remains great. And just in terms of short yardage situations, Zeke is very good at that job still. It was just not good when those were the two things he was good at. And you're making $90 million on a contract. Now, 1 year, $3 million, a bit easier to stomach that, I think, for Cowboys Nation. So, Rico Dowdle, man, someone that you think actually could be taking the lead here because it seems like, from Royce Freeman to some Deuce Vaughn slot wide receiver stuff. I feel like McCarthy and kind of the coach speak coming out of Dallas has been all over the place.
Well, they have said that this is going to be running back by committee. They're very comfortable with it. McCarthy said whether it's two or three guys, it's going to be running back by committee. And he said that Rico Dowdle is one of the lead guys there. I'm buying the hype that he is the best running back in Dallas right now. If he can fade another running back being brought in, I'm not worried about Royce Freeman when they're talking about him. They're always bringing up his special teams role as well, which is not great for his prospective usage as a running back. So yeah, I'm definitely in on Rico Dowdle as, especially at a cheaper ADP than where Zeke is going right now. And if Rico Dowdle ends up getting goal line work, like we're all
Ooh.
expecting, Zeke to get, then man, that pays off that ADP really, really nicely. And you have him in some zero RB builds
Yeah.
as like your running back 3 or your running back 4. I mean, that feels really nice.
And again, I've stressed this before with our ADP tool over at Fantasy Life, where sometimes it can be as easy as just kind of looking across the board and seeing one specific site has a guy drastically underpriced compared to everyone else. And it's like, yeah, he's probably a value. And Rico Dowdle is one of those guys, everyone. I mean, ESPN pick 166 overall, Sleeper 148, Yahoo 132. And then on the FFPCs, NFFCs, the higher stakes sites of the world, we're seeing him in the low 140s. So that's another guy, man, where we said it earlier, Justin Fields really could, cut his ADP in half if he does get the starting job. If we see Rico Dowdle go out there and get clear-cut RB1 snaps with the first team offense over these next few weeks, he could rise up draft boards in a hurry because, yeah, this offense, as long as Dak Prescott has been healthy, one of the highest scoring groups in the league, if not the highest scoring group like they were last year, certainly want to be in on their RB1, especially when they have shown some legit pass catching ability like Dowdle. Last season, he had top 10 marks in both yards per reception and yards per route run. So just 113 career touches. But again, when we're comparing him against old man Zeke, Royce Freeman is hurt with a groin, and Deuce Vaughn is hurt with a hamstring, certainly seems like all things are pointing up for Dowdle right now. But yeah, just praying that, again, we don't get Pirine or Khalil Herbert or Dameon Pierce or any of these guys messing up these backfields. I mean, could be good for those bag holders, don't get me wrong. But for Dowdle's case, please, let's keep things as they are. Greg, again, those are the two main, I think, Cincinnati and Dallas RB battles because we're really focused on getting invested into those probably high scoring offenses, but quite a few other RB2 battles going on.